We are back and ready to dive into Unit 5. Unit 5 is our writing from pictures. And what I might do is remind you just briefly of where we are in the roadmap of the 9 units. We have done Unit 1 and 2, taking keywords from each sentence of a composition. Unit 3, we put the story into the mind and we pull it out with the story sequence chart. So we're asking questions to get the key ideas of the story. Unit 4, we've learned how to choose, select, organize, and present facts in a topic clincher paragraph model. And in Unit 5, we're now back on the kind of creative side, the narrative descriptive writing. And the real big difference between these two sides is that on this side, the information is coming from an external source. And over here, the information is now starting to come from an internal source. So with writing from pictures, there's no source text per se, but you're not completely alone. We're going to give you a set of 3 pictures and a methodology of writing about these pictures. So if you turn in your workbook to page 65, you will see the little mini version of the poster here. Bird pecking the hose, and the hose spraying out, and the bird running away. Now, this unit, a couple things to get clear right up front, and that is, this unit is not a story sequence type of thing where the first paragraph tells characters and setting, and the second paragraph tells the conflict and development, and the third paragraph tells climax and resolution. It's not a story per se. It's really more of event description. And each paragraph has the same job. The job of the paragraph is to describe what's happening in the picture. It may, in some cases, depending on the pictures you have, come out a little bit like a story with characters, problem, resolution, etc. But that's not our goal, and that's not what we're thinking. So don't get confused between Unit 3, where each paragraph has a different purpose, and Unit 5, where each paragraph has the same purpose to describe the picture. So somewhere in large letters, put that down so you don't forget or get confused. Event description is really what we're doing here. Now, the basic model has 3 pictures, and therefore would be a 3-paragraph composition. That seems to be a nice length. 3 paragraphs is enough to kind of say something more than just too little, but it's not too long or overwhelming to feel long or overwhelming. So I'm going to demonstrate with 3 pictures and 3 paragraphs, but then I want to show you how you could adjust this. You could actually do fewer paragraphs, you could use fewer pictures, or you could even use more pictures and more paragraphs. So there'd be flexibility within there. But since the basic model is the 3, we'll start with that. Now you'll notice from the chart here that we are keeping the topic clincher idea going. Here, rather than where it says topic sentence, we're putting central fact. So what we're going to explain to the kids is that the topic sentence of this paragraph is the central fact, or the thing you see in the picture. What is there? What is visible in the picture? We introduced the clincher idea in Unit 4. We're going to continue to practice and reinforce that idea in Unit 5. So we put the word clincher there at the end of each paragraph. Probably the best way to try and figure out how this goes is to just jump in and do it a little bit together. So turn to page 71, where you see these pictures, and there's a place where you can put in the keywords. And we'll just make a little outline together and see how it goes. So the first picture, what is the central fact? What do you see in that picture? Okay, you see there's a bird, and the bird is pecking at a hose. Okay, that's what you see. That's the central fact. Now, you have to write a whole paragraph about this bird pecking this hose. Now, as I said yesterday, when I was young, I would have been horribly bad at this because I did not know the trick. I didn't know how to think of stuff. And I guess I, like a lot of people, just thought, well, if you just wait around, maybe you'll get an idea. But if you don't, well, then tough luck. So I would have had a real hard time with this. But now I know the trick. And that is, you have to be able to ask yourself questions, right? You have to have a little conversation with yourself. You have to get stuff out of your brain. You know, I like to tease teenagers occasionally, actually frequently. And one of the things I like to do is ask them questions and see how they answer the question. So very often, if I have a little group for the high school essay class or whatever, I'll ask them point blank, how do you think? How is it done? If someone says, think of stuff now, how do you make your mind do that? And very few people can answer this question. A lot of teenagers are quite honest, and they'll just say, I don't know. Perhaps the most common attempted answer I get is, you use your brain. Okay? How do you use your brain? I don't know. You just think of stuff. You just do it. It just happens, right? Kind of a passive, intransitive verb. It just happens. So I said, okay, for a minute, thinking in its simplest form is getting stuff out of your brain, right? It doesn't come to you. It comes out of you. And there's good and bad news. You can't think a thought you can't think, so relax, right? But if you want to figure out how to get stuff out of your brain, just imitate your mom. What does your mom do if you know something and she wants to know what you know? She asks you questions. Where have you been? Why are you late? Who else was there? What are you doing? How are you going to clean this up, right? So your mom kind of becomes a master question asker. And so if you want to get information out of your own brain, you've got to become a master question asker to yourself. And so we build on this quite a bit. And this is really the unit where it has to start. And so we want to have the kids kind of have at their tongue tips, fingertips, tips of their mind, question words, right? What are the big six? Shout them out. Who, what, where, when, why, how. Okay, those are the big six. Kipling wrote a wonderful poem about these 6 words. He called them trusted servants, wise men who taught me all that I know. And so these are basics. And then there's, of course, extensions off these. So, you know, what is someone thinking? What is someone saying? What is someone doing? Where did they come from? Where are they going to? When did it start? When will it end? Right? So there are extension questions. There's also a few questions that work particularly well with Unit 5. Is there anything outside the picture? Is there anything invisible? What might happen after this picture? What might have happened before this picture? And there are more. And as you teach this, you'll come up with some questions that will help students to understand this and be fluent with it. But the real trick then is to look at the picture and say, okay, bird's pecking the hose, and then start asking some questions. Will every question work for every picture? No. Would some questions work more than once? Yeah, possibly. You could fill up the whole thing with just, what do you think? What else 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 do you think? So you know the question works if you ask the question and you find an answer. That question connects with something. If you ask a question and it doesn't connect with something, try a different one, right? So this is very loose, very open. Children who are kind of on the creative imaginative side tend to enjoy this one because they have a lot more freedom. They don't have to be obedient to the facts. Okay, so we got a bird peck a hose. Let's look for a question. Why? There's a good one. Why is this bird pecking this hose?
He thinks it's a worm.
Thinks it's a worm. All right. Think it's a huge worm. I was teaching this one time in Kalispell, Montana, and I said, I wonder if chickens are really that stupid. And this one woman said, yes, we are chicken ranchers, and I guarantee you they are. I don't know. Oh, worm. Thinks it's a huge worm. All right, let's see. Before, what happened before he started pecking the hose? Okay, he wandered out of the coop and got lost. Okay. Who, what, where, why, how? How is he pecking? Describe his activity there. He's pecking vigorously. And frenetically. Why?
He's hungry.
Because he's very hungry. All right. All right. What's he thinking, if birds think? But we're kind of personifying him. What's he thinking while he's pecking at this hose? This is one tough-skinned nematode. Tough-skinned, but big. Okay, and you might squeeze in a fifth thing. One thing about the number of details I'll mention is that when you're in the nonfiction side, Unit 468, you need more details planned out because you can't just add stuff in and make it up. You have to be kind of obedient to the facts. When you're on the creative side, Units 357, you can get by with far fewer details because you're more likely to kind of embellish and elaborate and add in content as you go. So generally find that 4 or 5 is plenty for most people. Do you think we have enough words for a paragraph? All right, how might it go? Billy Bob Bird was pecking at the garden hose. That morning, he had wandered out of the coop and had got lost and disoriented. Seeing a huge worm, he thought, yes, this is the mother lode of nematodes. Vigorously, he attacked. Frenetically, he poked at that rubbery, leathery tube. The more he pecked, the hungrier he got, thinking, wow, this is one tough-skinned, big monster worm. It's going to be a tasty treat when I finally poke through, when I finally peck through this hose. Now, you could maybe use hose or this hose-like creature, if birds know what hoses are. So what you do is you don't have to plan the clincher in advance too hard, but you're writing the paragraph. When you get to the end, look at your first sentence and see, okay, what could I connect up like that? We'll see some examples of this in a minute. All right, central fact. Second picture, what do you see? Okay, the hose springs a leak. Okay. Hose springs, and you get a fountain of water. All right, so, oh, I put that in the wrong place. Hose springs a leak with a big fountain of water. Okay, so that's a central fact. Now we've got to kind of describe what happened just before, what's going on in his mind, or what's behind the scenes, or what can we say about that? So we scan. Somebody shout out a question.
How does he feel?
How does he feel at this moment? All right, someone shout out an answer.
Surprised.
All right, surprised. All right, so at first he was surprised. Then he realized success. And then what happened?
He was sprayed.
He got water in the face. All right, spray. Yeah, maybe the success comes first, the spray comes second, and the surprise comes third, maybe. Okay. All right, someone ask another question.
What's going on outside of the picture?
What's going on outside of the picture? What could be outside of that picture?
Maybe another animal is watching.
Okay.
The flock.
His siblings. All right.
The farmer is looking for him.
Tree, laughing.
Farmer.
The cheeseless crow is laughing. The farmer is now irritated because it's destroyed his new hose. So what's he doing? He's fuming, reaching for his gun, shotgun. He's a farmer. We're in Texas. And someone asked me another question.
Why?
Why what? What is the bird doing? What does he think?
What does he say?
What did he say? Okay, what did he say? What?
Man, this is a juicy worm.
Well, no, it's spraying him in the face. I mean, this is not a worm, okay. Not a worm. What does he think it might be? What else is he thinking or feeling or doing?
I think he was tricked.
He was tricked?
He's afraid.
He's afraid? All right, he's now getting wet and afraid.
Maybe he thinks that it's tasteless worm guts.
Tasteless worm guts. All right, we got it. We got something to work with. And remember, if you go write this up, you're not married to that. You don't have to use all those words or ideas. But maybe come out something like this. Suddenly, Billy Bob Bird pierced through the hose, and his beak was stuck for a moment. When he ripped it out with great pain, the water sprayed out of the hose and became a fountain in his face. At first, he thought, success! But then he was surprised because this spray was not tasteless worm guts. This was just water. Nearby, a certain cheeseless crow, familiar to us from a fable recently read, was laughing at this silly bird as he flapped his wings crazily in the fountain of water. Farmer Fred was fuming, knowing that this was now the 7th hose these stupid chickens had ruined. This was not going to happen again, because at $29.95 a piece, he could not afford them in such quantity. Grabbing his shotgun, he started to approach the bird who was now shouting, "Not a worm, not a worm, not a worm," as if to warn the crow, who didn't know any better. He was wet, he was afraid, but he was paralyzed, not knowing what to do, and therefore stood under the spray of water from the fountain. Something like that? Okay. So, I don't know, a little hard to just narrate these things out and sound perfect, but I want you to get a sense of how the keywords can go in, and then you can elaborate and play with it, whatever. Okay, so first, I asked the questions, you gave me the answers, right? Then I asked you to ask the questions, right? And you to give each other answers, right? And so now it would maybe be a good chance to ask you to try this on your own. Would you like to do that? Just see what you can come up with there for a third paragraph's worth of content. So the central fact, what is it? Okay, Billy Bob Bird, run away. So ask yourself some questions. What is he thinking, saying, or doing? Where is he going? When will he get there? Why is he running? How, in what way is he running or acting? What's happening with the things outside? The crow, the farmer we put in. What might happen after this whole scene is over? Try and ask yourself some questions, put some answers into a keyword outline. A little bit hard to do all on your own, huh? A little bit harder. Easier to talk it through. Anyone have theirs? They'd like to say some ideas? Aaron, can you kind of narrate yours a little bit there? What have you got? Or just read the keywords, either way.
So Billy Bird ran away from the spraying hose. As he did, the farmer approached very angry. "Mommy, Mommy, I want to go home," yelled the baby bird. The crow, who stopped his laughing, swooped down and grabbed the baby bird and flew him back to his bird coop. The baby bird said, "I will never run away again."
See, a happy ending. Just juxtapose that with mine. I've got to warn my family, this is the attack of the giant worms. The crow, laughing uproariously, fell off her perch. The shotgun blasted, missed Billy Bob Bird, but hit the poor crow, who was having now a really, really bad day. That's the boy version, yeah. Anyone else want to share? You got something? Yes, okay, Maureen?
Billy Bob Bird marched away in disgust. His dignity had been sacrificed to cheap humor. He had been threatened with violence over a public menace left in his way. He was dripping, he was lost, he was hungry. When he returned to the coop, he set up a political action committee against such outrages. Truly, Billy Bob Bird marched not in vain.
You must be a fan of James Finn Gardner and his politically correct fairy tales? Oh, well, you would find kindred soul there, yeah. All right, so that's kind of the approach. Once again, just like Unit 3, creating the outline is the harder part. Writing it out once you've got that done is going to be a little easier and more fun. So model this part with the students together as much as is needed. And I will tell you, the great thing about working with kids, especially younger ones, is they're not limited by the laws of common sense and logic. So they'll come up with any number of things that I, as a too old and unimaginative person, would never. I had one little boy once wrote the story, and this was the house of a mad scientist who had actually filled his water system with nitroglycerin. And so this hose didn't just spray out, it actually exploded and destroyed everything. And where did that, I mean, who in the world would fill their hose with nitroglycerin? Well, there, you know, there's an 11-year-old boy for you who could come up with an idea. So they can have a lot of fun with that. And this unit from pictures, you can get your pictures really from anywhere. We have a set of pictures that I had drawn by someone that kind of work nicely. You'll see an example of one of those for the practicum. Dr. Webster explained to me the origin of this unit. Again, it's quite old, because when he was teaching school, one of the big behavioral problems in school was kids smuggling in comic books. And they would hide the comic books inside their textbooks. And they would look like they're reading when they're actually reading their comic books. And so this was contraband. And so he, the teacher, would confiscate these things, and he would acquire a nice little pile of comic books. And he thought one day, if they like this so much, why not let them write about it? So one afternoon, he cut his comic books apart, pasted pictures on paper, and the next day handed them out and said, here, write a story from the pictures. And that's kind of how it came to be. Isn't that funny? So you can use comics. Usually the ones with action work a little bit better. There's kind of action comics like Calvin and Hobbes, and then there's talking head comics. Those don't work quite as well. Some comics are actually written without words. I'm not greatly proud of the fact, but when I was younger, I used to read Mad magazines, and one of the things I liked was that Spy versus Spy. Do you remember that? And that type of thing works well because it's written to have no words. There are also books without words. Did a marvelous demonstration class once. Went to the library and got, what's that big dog? It's like a St. Bernard or something. Carl? Carl? Yeah, it's a beautiful wordless picture book about this dog that does good things and helps people. Now, of course, there's way too many pictures, but I just took one from the beginning of the book, one from the middle of the book, and one from the end of the book, and did a great little demonstration class in a fifth grade in a school in Washington. So those kind of picture books. What else do you think might work for pictures? Where could you get some pictures? Magazine, sure. Sometimes a magazine story will have different pictures, and they may not necessarily even contain the same character, the way this has the bird in all three, but kids can string a story around, string events, describe them. One day, I know you professional teachers will find this hard to believe, but one day I was not prepared for class. And I had a bunch of kids coming, and I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I thought, okay, we'll do Unit 5, because that's about time we get on with it, and I'm going to have them draw pictures, right? So we took the first 15 minutes of the class. I said, everybody draw 3 pictures. And some people said, I can't draw, just stick men is okay, just anything. And then I got the idea to have them trade. So they drew 3 pictures, and then they swapped with someone else. And they found it just hilarious that the kind of storyline or identity or whatever they were thinking of when they drew the pictures was nothing like what the person who wrote from the pictures came up with. So that was kind of fun. I tried it again, only I made the mistake of making the pictures homework. So I said, okay, homework this week is to draw 3 pictures, bring it in for the next one. Well, they brought in these pictures, and when I said, okay, trade with someone, oh, outrage. No, I will not trade. These are my pictures. I spent hours working on. Okay, fine. I don't care. Keep your pictures. It was just an idea. What else might you do? You could possibly integrate this with content areas. Met a science teacher in Boise who kind of took me to heart when I said, don't do multiple choice tests. It's a form of intellectual child abuse. I used to have a very strong opinion about that. And I said, you know, kind of figure out other ways to have your students share what they know. And she got the idea of using the pictures from the science book on the test to see if the students could explain the pictures, if they had learned what they were trying to learn. You know, a lot of things in science come in phases, you know, cycles and chains and all that. History. If you were studying a particular period of history and you had a picture that was connected with that time of history, right? I'm thinking maybe of if you were studying the American War for Independence, Washington crossing the Delaware, right? Now, that would kind of beg the question of, what if you don't have three? Right? What if you have two good ones or one good one? Could you still use it? Absolutely. See, because these paragraphs are all doing essentially the same thing, describing the picture, you could really just have one picture and one paragraph, couldn't you? Right? What's in the picture? What are the details behind the scenes, how it got to be that way, background? What's in the picture? You're done. You could have just two pictures, right? Central fact, details, central fact, details. You're done. So there's no rule that says you would have to use 3 paragraphs and 3 pictures, right? You could, I wouldn't recommend you start this way, but you could actually write more paragraphs than there are pictures. So let's say that you had 2 good pictures, but you didn't have a third. Well, how might it work? First picture, what do you see? Central fact, how it got to be that way. Next picture, what do you see? Central fact, how it got to be that way. If there were a third picture in this sequence, what would you see? And that becomes the central fact, you see? So you'd imagine the third picture, and then the whole rest of the process would be very similar. You could even do it 3 paragraphs from one picture by imagining the one that came before and imagining the one that comes after. So you could actually write 3 paragraphs from one picture. And it was interesting because there's a school in Edmonton where Mrs. Ingham's daughter taught for many, many years. And in Edmonton, they had a standardized writing test, but instead of a written prompt, right, they gave the kids a picture prompt. Well, this entire school was using blended structure and style and teaching all the kids every year all 9 units. So these kids knew exactly how to deal with a picture. Consequently, their scores on these tests were very, very high because they did so much better than the other kids. So the authorities came to the school and said, okay, we believe that you are cheating, that somehow you got this picture in advance and have coached your kids because they all have done so well. They should have just said, what method do you use to teach your kids writing here? But, you know, guilty till proven innocent, I suppose. Charming story. You could actually do more pictures if you wanted to, right? A family that I knew in Southern California, 2 twin boys went to a trip in Arizona with their grandparents. And they saw lots of things, and they had their own little cameras, right? So they took a lot of pictures on their trip with their grandparents in Arizona. And then they came back, and their mom said, oh, you know what? You could write a paragraph about one of your pictures. Kind of like a caption paragraph, right? I mean, it would work perfectly. What did you see? Okay, now tell all that you thought and saw and learned while you were there. What did you see, right? Well, it turned out these boys got into this. And they started writing these paragraphs to go with each of the photos. And they got so into it, they just kept going. And by the end of it, they had a book of about 50 photographs with a paragraph about each one. and then they got it bound up and gave it to grandparents for a gift. Isn't that charming? Yeah. So really, it's limitless what you can do with the pictures. The main thing is you just feel a little bit unnerved because there is no real thing you've got out there to represent. You have to pull it out from in here. And I'll tell you the truth. I don't like creative writing. In fact, the only C I ever got in my entire academic career, and it's not because I'm so smart, it's because I took all the easiest classes I could take. But the only C I ever got was in creative writing, English 301 at San Francisco State University. And from that day forward, it sealed in my hatred of creative writing. So I end up teaching this writing class with Webster syllabus, right? And so this first year through, I'm teaching. And I do Unit 3, because that's okay. Unit 4, really liked that. The girls were doing so well. Got to Unit 5, and I thought, yuck. I'm just going to skip it. So I did. I just skipped to Unit 5, went right on to Unit 6, research. Ooh, I like that, research. Got to Unit 7. Ugh. Okay, we'll do a little bit just to give it lip service. But I did short shrift. Then Unit 8, essays, right? Because I like to live over there in the world of facts and analysis, right? I don't like this creative business. So my personal preferences shaded the way I taught this group. Okay, so that summer, I took all my students' essays and samples and things up to Dr. Webster to show him that I had been working hard to teach this program. And he looked at the essays and, okay, introduction, topic clincher, dress up, opener, very good. This introduction is really lousy. Next paper. Oh, good. Oh, introduction stinks. Next paper. Nothing, say anything in the conclusion here. This conclusion stink. Next paper. He was disgusted with the student writing because the conclusions of the essays didn't say anything. And it took me years to realize this, to make the connection. But see, it's in the conclusion of the essay where you're supposed to say what you think about the stuff, right? But I had, in a way, by giving short shrift to the creative side of things, deprived the students of the chance to practice that process of asking questions and finding out what they think about stuff, right? And I've since come to understand that, to look at a picture, even a cartoon of Calvin and Hobbes or something, and think about it, and describe the event, that's the same process you need to look at a situation in the world and think about it and ask yourself questions. Do you see? So since that time, I have tried to be more disciplined about forcing myself to understand the value of the creative writing side, of the brain-based, of the question-asking process, because it really is the other hemisphere that we need to have the whole. Let's take a look at just a couple samples. Page 72 is a good one to look at because this is from Webster's original book, Blended Structure and Style and Composition. And this sample does a good job of showing how you can match your topic and clincher and not feel like you're going backwards or getting stuck. Because that's often the feeling, because you say what's going on, and then you have to say what's going on again. It sounds like you're kind of stuck a little bit. So this sample, I think, is worth reading because you can see how this particular element works so well. Papageno, okay, first look at the pictures. What do you see? Big guy standing there looking at this machine of some sort. What's in the second picture? Yeah, he's standing on one foot, might be dancing, swinging his arms and legs, looks like he's maybe sweating, right? Third picture, you see what he was doing. It says, can you read it? Your weight and workout video. Ah, so now we know he was exercising. And now in this picture, what's the central fact?
He's walking away.
He's walking away. He's pleased, he's smiling, and he's sweating. Okay, so those are the things you see. So let's see how this comes out in a sample here. Papagino dug in his pocket for a coin. He was considerably overweight. Papagino had tried numerous diets that had promised miracles, but he couldn't stick to them. Here, right on the sidewalk in Calgary's opulent oil district, stood the perfect answer to his problem. He smiled. The machine guaranteed weight reduction or his money back. It was a Weight Watcher's dream. Digging deep into his pocket, he found the coin for which he had been searching. You see how that works? So what's repeating? You've got Papagino, dig, dug, coin, coin, pocket, pocket. So it's kind of as though you get this situation, and then you get the background, the behind the scenes, what's going on in his mind. Almost a little bit like a flashback kind of thing, but a little bit of history there, and then brings you back to the picture, ready to move on. Do you see? Next one. Papagino kicked his legs from side to side in great aerobic swings. Okay, that's what you see. Now, what is he thinking, say, or doing in that? When did he start? Why is he doing this? How is he behaving? We get some details. When he had plugged in his money, the machine had registered 285 pounds. The music blared, and an aerobic instructor who was built like Apollo flashed on the screen. Papagino did his best to keep up with 10 squats, 10 jumps in one place, left leg to the side, right leg to the side. He was exhausted. One last leg swing, and the music stopped while the magic number 284 appeared on the screen. See, so you got leg swing, and it's almost as though that is a snapshot, and the paragraph is describing just before, during, and after that snapshot. See how that works? Okay, third picture. Perspiring and exhausted, Papagino strode away with a wide grin on his face. Just as the machine had promised, he had lost 1 pound. He began to calculate. To lose 84 pounds at 50 cents each would cost $42. So what is he thinking? We're getting into that question. It never crossed his mind that it would be easy enough for the video to show 1 pound less than the original. Perhaps he had sweat a pound of water. He was happy. He had earned a big juicy hamburger and fries. The human condition. Papagino smiled at this reducing magic as he trudged along the Calgary Trail in search of a Burger King. Now notice, trudged is reflecting strode. Smiled reflects grin, and Papagino is repeated, right? Now, one other little nuance I'll point out to you here, and that is the idea of a final clincher. This idea of a final clincher would apply only to units 4, 5, 6, and maybe 7 if you do shortened variations. But in units 4, 5, 6, and 7 if you don't have it, there's no introduction, there's no conclusion. They're just 1, 2, or 3 paragraph compositions. And so the idea of the final clincher is that at the end of the paper, this has a double job. It repeats or reflects keywords of its own topic, and it contains the words that are in the title. So that's the idea of a final clincher. So in Unit 2, we just say last sentence, title, connect. In Unit 3, story clincher, last sentence, connects with the title. But in Unit 4, we have the paragraph clincher, and if there's multiple paragraphs, then this final clincher has that double job. Does that make sense? We see the example here. You can mark it in your book to remind yourself. Read the very last sentence. Papagino smiled at this reducing magic as he trudged along the Calgary Trail in search of the Burger King. Smiled, grinned, trudged, strode, and the title, reducing magic, is also contained in that sentence. Do you see? Good. Now, there's one little kind of, you may or may not like this, but an opportunity to teach a grammar concept here. that is, I wouldn't say necessary, but it's a chance to do something. And so if you're working with young children, you probably would not try to address this at all. But middle school and up, you probably could. And that is the idea of the past perfect tense. Or in Latin, we would say the pluperfect, meaning the past of the past. So in English, we would say, I arrived at 8 o'clock. Before that, I had been at Einstein-Biggles. Do you see? So past, I had arrived. Before that, the past of the past, the before the past. And in English, this tense construction is usually with the word had, right? I had eaten. I had been. I had hoped, right? So if you want to, you can point out to the kids that this is a little bit of an opportunity to tell the past of the past. If this statement was in present tense, and you go back in time, this would be past tense, and you'd be back to the present tense. But that's hard to write in the present tense. It's very challenging to do well. So it would be safer for the kids, start in the past tense, then make a shift back to before that by using the past perfect, or in some cases, a past participle. You see this is done in Webster's sample here. Check again and see the shift. Papageno dug in his pocket for a coin, past tense. He was considerably overweight, past tense. Papageno had tried numerous diets. Aha, do you see the shift back? Now we're going into the past. What was going on with him before this picture even started? He had tried numerous diets that had promised miracles, but he couldn't stick to them. So there's that shift. Next paragraph does it again. Papageno kicked his legs from side to side in great aerobic swings. When he had plugged in his money, the machine had registered 285. Shift back. Do you see? Third paragraph does it again. Perspiring and exhausted, Papageno strode away. Just as the machine had promised, he had lost 1 pound. Okay? Now, I don't think it's hugely necessary that you have any anxiety about teaching this particular point of grammar, but if it's appropriate, given the age of your students, their experience, and your understanding, you certainly can teach it conveniently because it fits kind of with this model. If you would like to look on page 70, you will see some of these words that drive the poor ESL students crazy. The irregular verbs like sing, sang, sung, right? So I like to sing. I sang yesterday. I had sung many songs before. So there's a little chart on that, and it may or may not come in handy. Let's take a look at a couple of the student samples. Here's a younger student writing this little sequence where the wind comes up and blows the stars off the flag. It's kind of cute. Another 7th grade example about a little ring bearer and missing rings. And then a spy in the urn. This is a cute one. This is another middle school student recruited by Helmet. And then I think possibly one of the finest examples I've ever seen from a very talented 9th grade student to this Norman Rockwell painting on page 76. You see the teachers come in, and there's happy birthday and apples on her desk, and the children are sitting neatly in their rows. And there's this kind of poignancy. Rockwell, of course, is so well known for creating these poignant moments. So this would be an example of 3 paragraphs to 1 picture. And I believe the student here chose to put the 1 picture at the end and imagine the previous 2 scenes, right? So the picture went with the 3rd paragraph. I had another of my students There's a Norman Rockwell print of this girl sitting on a bench outside the principal's office, and she's got a big black eye and a smile across her face. I had one of my quite competent high school students write a 3-paragraph story to that picture, and she put it into the public library essay contest, won first place. So it worked quite well. So read through those student samples at your leisure. What I would like to do is have you do the practicum now. If you turn to page 78, you'll see a set of pictures here. This is one of the ones we had drawn, and it's part of the set of pictures that we sell with our source text packet. So in the first picture, what do you see? What's the central fact? All right, woman kind of mixing a bowl. She looks kind of happy, cooking something. She could be a mom, a sister, an aunt, a housekeeper, babysitter. In the next picture, what do you see? All right, you see a child. Yeah, presumably a boy because of the jersey, but could be a kind of androgynous looking child, pouring something into presumably that same bowl, and pretty happy about that. In the third picture, what do you see? Female character returns, and the bowl is, yeah, she's shocked or frightened or horrified or confused. The bowl is spewing, foaming, whatever, right? Okay, now here's how we're going to work the practicum. Much like we did with the bat and the nightingale, we're going to divide you into groups of 2 or 3, and your goal is to facilitate each other's thinking by asking each other some questions. When you hear an answer in your mind, you can say it to your partners or not, and then you write it down. You don't all have to agree and write down the same thing, but I think if you have a little bit of conversation, it'll facilitate the process, and you'll see how that goes. So your goal then is to fill out this outline with approximately 4 or 5 lines of content pertaining to the picture. First paragraph, first picture, second paragraph, second picture, like that. All kind of flow around the room, and if you have any questions or get stuck or anything, you can flag me down, and we'll give you, maybe about 15 minutes to see if you can do this brainstorming part of the exercise. All right, any questions on that? Okay, get to work. All right, you've done the practicum exercise, at least the outline portion, with your partner or partners. And so the full practicum would be to go ahead and write out the story from the outline, knowing that you have total freedom and can change things and embellish, add. You're not locked to that outline, but at least it gives you a starting point. And the checklist for that practicum is on page 80. So this would be homework for you, since we don't have time right now to do it. Folks watching the video, they can go ahead and write out the whole story right now. And again, if you're looking for accreditation, this is one of the required submissions. So follow the checklist on page 80 and have a good time with it, noting that you get a chance to now add in a decoration in each paragraph as well. So dress-ups, openers, and a decoration. But I would like to take just a few minutes before we move on to Unit 6 and find out if you have any questions or observations, points of confusion perhaps, pertaining to anything we've talked about in Unit 5, writing from pictures. Anybody? Okay, we've got one right there. Did you have fun with this one? Is it a little easier to work in a group? Does it kind of facilitate the thinking, talk to each other? Yeah. Okay, yes, your question.
Unit 5 is not my favorite unit. I'm not good at creative writing and I do not like. So how do I teach? this unit?
Yes, that's a very good question. How do you teach something you don't like? Well, the simpler answer would be just pay someone else to do that. But if you're in a situation where you want to do it, but you're unsure, I think that's what you're saying. What I have discovered is you really can trust the system. The system works. Show the kids the pictures. Put in a blank outline on the board. Do just like I did. Put up a bunch of questions, and you can ask questions. You can do that. That's a natural facility you have as a teacher. You don't have to know the answers because the kids will give you answers. And as I mentioned, they're not bound by the rules of reality. They can come up with any wild and crazy idea. And I would say that 10 times out of 10 times that I have taught Unit 5 to a group of children, regardless of who they were, they came up with ideas I never, ever would have in a million years. And so I don't worry anymore. I don't have to have a clue what's going to come. All I have to know is how to ask the question, hear the answer, and put 2 or 3 keywords for their answers. And if you can ask a dozen questions, you can get that far. And once you've got that far, you're home free. Now, just spinning it into sentences and the creativity and elaboration will grow. But I would have one more piece of advice for you. Write the stories yourself. Force yourself to do it. Because in writing the stories, you start to catch that creativity. You start to, oh, there's a new idea. Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's a cute thing. And then read your student stories and read your stories to them. And I really do believe that teaching writing is best done in a small group or a group of some sort because you can share ideas, right? And you can hear someone else has oh yeah, the telephone rang. Oh, I could have thought of that, telephone rang. Well, instead of the phone ring, let's have the doorbell. Okay. So it's the combination and permutation. And really nobody owns ideas, right? They float around. We borrow them. We combine them. We share them. And the best possible place to get original ideas is probably from the unfettered by logic minds of young children. Does that encourage you a little bit? I can't solve the problem that you don't like it, but I can encourage you, the system works. It really does. I did this little series where I went to 9 elementary schools in 2 weeks. I went to a different school every day, and I did 5 demonstration classes every day in a different school. I had no idea what was going to happen. I would just walk into the room, start putting an outline on the board, just ask the questions, and it always worked. The system itself works. So do it. And if you need another pep talk, call our support system. We are there for you. Good. Another question? Yes.
I know you explained the final clincher on taking that all the way back. What about the clincher for each of the paragraphs? I was a little shaky on how to go from, well, number 4 on the outline to a clincher there.
Okay. Yes. The word clincher is there to remind you to follow the rule that the clincher or the last sentence in the paragraph should do what? Do you remember? Let's say the rule together. The topic sentence and the clincher sentence must repeat or reflect 2 or 3 key words. So in the case, let's look at some student samples, because really that's the best way to understand this. Let's look at the example on page 73. Okay, this is a younger student. At the Army base, it was a gorgeous morning and it was beginning to get windy. Look at the last sentence. Raising the flag, the men did not notice that the lovely morning was beginning to be a very windy one. So, gorgeous, lovely, morning, morning, windy, windy. Do you see those corresponding? Next one. The flag was raised, a terrible wind began to pick up. Clincher. Caused the seams on the flag to rip because the horrendous wind was too much. So terrible, horrendous, wind, wind, flag, flag, right? So those are paragraph clinchers that repeat or reflect 2 to 3 keywords of that topic sentence. Then the final clincher, right, has that double job. Let's see if this student does it. Wind and rain ceased, men at the base found the stars far away, put them back on the battered flag. Well, it has stars, that's repeated. It would have been stylish, I think would have been a better example if this student had put, the men at the base found the stars which had been stripped from the flag. Then you'd have stripped of its stars. It'd be a little tighter, but it basically does the job. Take a look at page 76, this wonderful composition on the Rockwell painting here. Gazed apartment, clincher, looked around apartment. Next paragraph, students decorated, clincher, children decorated. Okay, those are regular topic, clincher. Now the third one, stood, classroom beaming, clincher, astonished, that would go with beaming, I guess, standing, classroom. And then it says it was worth all the riches in the world. And the title, better than riches. See? So that's the differentiation there. That final clincher has the double job. The other clinchers are just having that. But like I said, you don't have to plan this in the outline. I mean, there's a line there, but you don't have to have a line there. You don't have to plan it. You can simply put the word, when you get to the end, do it. Write the story and you will figure it out for yourself. Good. Any other question on Unit 5? Any nagging thought or suspicion of complaint or excitement? Anything?
I know you did some modeling of retelling Unit 4 and 5, but is it important for us as teachers to make sure that we emphasize it so much in Unit 1 and 2? Should we be going back and making sure that our students are doing all that retelling in Unit 3 and Unit 4, Unit 5?
The verbal retelling. Yes, good question. I think the question would be, does that idea carry through all 9 units? And the official answer, of course, would be yes. How important it is probably varies group to group, kids to kids. I think that the more you can have the kids talk through something, the better they understand it, and the more likely they are to write about it well. So particularly in Unit 4, once we had that outline on species of elephants, kinds of elephants, it would have been great to talk it through, especially, you know, if it were a group of children who needed to learn that or wanted to learn it better. The other benefit of talking it through is you can kind of discover, he didn't really understand that idea. Let's read it again, talk about it, try to define terms, be sure that he really does understand it. So I think it's always safe to talk through things before you write them out. But certainly in Unit 5, it seems a little less important, maybe a little bit harder to do. Unit 6, you're back in the world of facts, so probably more helpful. But if you're working with a public speaking program through the whole school year, you can really talk from outlines at all. I mean, you could have a 3-paragraph outline of a fairy tale and practice telling it verbally and do that as a public speaking presentation. So, does that answer? Good. All right, we're going to take a very short break and come on back for Unit 6, which is summarizing multiple references, one of my favorites.